As bad as 2010 ended, 2011 started out with some good news. The cubs of the oldest lioness were 4 months old now and about to get some new playmates. The short-tailed Ximunghwe lioness had also given birth to a male and a female cub. And there was a third litter that had been born by the beginning of April. Unfortunately, the 4 cubs didn't make it out of the den. By the beginning of March, the 2 Minipogs and their 2 younger cousins were seen on kills together with their fathers. On this particular incident, it was a baby giraffe kill which the males willingly shared with their offspring, but not so much with the lionesses. The Othawa pride, on the other hand, didn't have that problem. They were pretty much neglected by their fathers. Not long after this footage had been taken in March, they suffered the loss of the last adult lioness, who was the mother of the 15-month-old subadults. She got caught in a snare and died from her injuries. Rangers reported that the subadults were calling desperately for her, but she never replied. And sadly, she would not be the last victim of a snare in 2011. The older subadults who took over the responsibility of raising her cubs could not protect them from other males. One of them was killed in May by 2 males who could not be identified, and the other cub was killed in September by the Selatis. All the while, the Mapogo had only eyes for the Ximunghwe pride, and mating was still high on their to-do list. At the same time, in the southern parts of Sabi Sand, changes were in motion too. With the arrival of the Kruger males Freddy and Limper at the beginning of 2011, the southern pride was facing challenging times. The 8 3-year-old subadults who survived the takeover of the Toulon males were now threatened by Freddy and Limper. The 3 young lionesses maybe not so much, but the 5 young males were not tolerated any longer. They were the offspring of the golf course males, the sons of the roller coaster coalition. When the Toulon males ousted their fathers, the subadults went pretty much nomadic, accompanied by 2 lionesses. Given the opportunity, young males hang on to their pride as long as possible. But when the Kruger males arrived, the time of the 5 young Selati boys was up. Luckily for them, their mothers were the best buffalo hunters in Sabi Sand, and they taught their sons how to bring down the most dangerous species of all. Rangers were stunned when they watched them hunting buffalo without the guidance and the help of an adult. Their hunting success made them confident and strong, but not confident enough to challenge the mighty Mapogo. Singita reported in April that the Mapogo got wind of the 5 young males and chased them over a long distance out of their territory. Luckily for them, the Mapogo didn't push on further, and all of them got away unharmed. But unfortunately, their streak of luck did not continue. On June 14, they clashed with the Majingilane. They got hold of one of them and killed him. After they had lost their brother, they kept a low profile, and on their journey they met 3 young lionesses who were on the brink of sexual maturity. The young Sparta lionesses were the ones the Selati mated with first. Having made that experience at the age of 3.5 to 4 years, it might have contributed to become dominant at such a young age. However, they were not the only ones who wanted a piece of the pie. A young coalition of 6 males aging between 5 and 7 years old were hanging around the northern reaches of Sabi Sand. They even went as far west as Arathusa and explored the northeastern corner of Singita. The part of Singita called Othawa was supposed to be neutral territory between the Mapogo and the Majingilane. Maybe that's why some reports suggested that the Mapogo had gotten into a fight with the Majingilane. But at the time of the fight, they were seen in Mala mating with the Spada lionesses. Back to the Matimba, when 3 of them came to blows with the Mapogo in the early morning hours of June 19. No one had witnessed the encounter. When rangers of Singita arrived, they were literally running into 3 Mapogo dripping with blood. There was no sign of the Matimba and rangers were not able to relocate them. Ranger Ximunghwe summarized what had happened during the course of the night leading up to the fight that morning. Three of the Matimba had started roaring during the night. Makulu, Mr. T and Pretty Boy reacted immediately to confront the trespassers. While the rangers were on their way, they only could hear them fighting from a distance. When they finally approached the area, they came across the Mapogo showing off new battle scars. The physical status of the Matimba, though, could not be determined, since they were hiding out in the thick bush. Ranger Mark Broderick from Singita, who saw them right after the battle, was the one who assumed they had gotten into a fight with the Majingilane, but shortly after he got confirmation that they were on Mala at the time. All the evidence pointed to the Matimba, who were seen the day before, only 15 kilometers away from where the fight took place. The outcome was undisputed. The Matimba retreated and the Mapogo announced their victory into the cold winter morning. Aside from their bloody scratches, Makulu and Mr. T were limping, but the message had been delivered. A little over a week later, Makulu was seen mating with a Ximunghwe lioness, and despite his injury, he made sure that Pretty Boy understood that this was his lady. In 2011, many litters were born into the Ximunghwe pride, but for one reason or another, many of these cubs didn't make it. Between May and September, the 3 other lionesses had also given birth to 8 cubs in total. Some of them were killed by a leopard, some died from injuries inflicted by hyenas, and others just disappeared. One lioness, though, had lost all her cubs by the end of October. It was the youngest litter that got killed by a leopard. Later, some people would say she was the one who encouraged the Selati to take over. Whatever it may be, I leave that to your judgment. Fact is, her cycle repeated over many months, calling out for males to mate with. The most tragic story, though, is the story of the Minipogs. They celebrated their first birthday in August. They were healthy and strong, with a mother who was an excellent huntress providing for them. Why she had chosen to raise them apart from the pride remains a mystery, but shortage of food supply could have been a determined factor. Their younger cousins, who were born a couple of months later, looked sometimes a little undernourished. The Minipogs, on the other hand, were always well fed. because they had to share the spoils only with their mother. She even had been observed once dragging a kill to her boys. Even though she was the oldest lioness, she was very skilled and very determined to give her cubs the best chance possible to grow up to adulthood. What she couldn't have anticipated was that she would end up dying in a snare sometime in November. Her 15-month-old cubs were wandering around, searching for their mum. One of the Minipogs ended up being killed by the Othawa pride, and the other eventually found his relatives from the Ximunghwe pride. We know that cubs are cared for when their mothers die, but this poor cub hadn't been raised in the pride, and as a consequence, the lionesses rejected him. Mr. T of all, who wasn't even his father, unbeknownst to him, was the one who rose up to the challenge and defended the cub to the lionesses who were constantly attacking him. But the story didn't have a happy ending. The cub was left behind, beaten up and injured. He eventually died. Since Mr. T had returned to the west, 16 cubs were born, but only 4 of them would see the end of the year. It was only short-tailed 2 cubs who celebrated their first birthday in December, 1 cub born in May and another one born in July. Speaking of cubs, by the end of 2011, 11 cubs of the Majingilane had survived to the critical 1-year mark. They were divided between 3 prides, Tsalala, Styx and Fourways. The Tsalala pride, though, had to tell a sad story too. One of their younger cubs, born in May, got lost at the beginning of November. The little boy had survived 5 weeks on his own before he found his way back to the pride. The happiness of the reunion, though, was short-lived, because only 3 weeks later he got killed by one of his fathers. Some people tend to measure the success of a coalition by counting the offspring. I dare to say it's difficult to compare. But let's just go there for a moment and have a look at the descendants being alive today. Fact is, many Mapogo cubs were lost due to human intervention. Not only the 5 Sand River boys died as a consequence, but also the 2 Minipogs and the 2 Othawa subadults whose mothers were killed by snares. Speaking of the Othawa, after the 1.5-year-old subadults were gone, the young females and the young males went separate ways. The females were on the brink of sexual maturity, and their 2 brothers approached their 4th birthday. To the displeasure of the Mapogo, their sons were still hanging around in their father's territory. Over the last couple of months, the level of aggression towards their offspring had risen and seemed to have reached a boiling point. One of the more serious confrontations with their sons happened to be in June. Inyati reported that aside from the confrontation with the Matimba males, there had also been an encounter with the Mapogo and their sons. Both of them were beaten up badly, and one of them was lucky that his spine hadn't been broken. This encounter might have been the reason for the young males to go semi-nomadic and leave their sisters for good. To make matters worse for the Mapogo, the young males kept coming. In August, 2 young Kuhuma males started mating with the Othawa lionesses, and the young Selati males, they hadn't given up either. On October 17, 3 of them were resting on Idube, while the 4th Selati male was in company of 3 Ximunghwe lionesses, walking through camp, and 5 days later 2 Selati males were seen hanging around the Ximunghwe lionesses again. By the end of December, one of the Othawa lionesses had given birth to her first litter. The fathers were most likely the Ximunghwe males, but the 4 cubs sadly didn't survive. They were killed in April 2012 by the Selati males. By the end of 2011, the Mapogo amped up patrolling. Makulu and Mr. T took the task on securing the borders, while Pretty Boy spent most of his time with the Ximunghwe pride. On Christmas Day, there was yet another squabble between the Mapogo and their 2 sons. Makulu and Mr. T had killed a young buffalo, so it seemed, and the 2 young Othawa males were watching from a distance. On a second thought, rangers concluded the young boys must have killed the buffalo and their fathers had stolen it. The final push, though, must have been the encounter that happened the next day. Pretty Boy started stalking and eventually attacked one of his sons, and 3 of the Ximunghwe lionesses joined in, and at some point the poor chap had 4 lines on his back. After this encounter, they got the message and left the western sector for good. 2011 ended in a mood that could be described as the calm before the storm. On New Year's Eve, the Selati males were seen in the south of Mala Mala, digesting a buffalo they had killed the day before. They were biding their time, and it wouldn't take them long until they worked up the courage to rattle on the throne of the mighty Mapogo.